Well, as you know, this series is being played for the first time for the Crow-Thorp Trophy, a beautiful, beautiful trophy to commemorate two great players, particularly good, respectively, against New Zealand and England, Graeme Thorpe and Martin Crowe. Taken from us and from the game far too early in tragic circumstances, and alongside me Steve Harmison and Ian Smith to talk about Graeme Thorpe and Martin Crowe. First of all, gentlemen, it's a very, very widely well-received move, isn't it? I mean, not only is it a beautiful trophy designed by David Ngawati and created from the bats belonging to both Crowe and Thorpe, but it commemorates two players who were immensely popular and very, very successful cricketers, Harmy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, immensely popular. Thorpe was a great man and a great teammate and a great player in the generation before sort of central contracts. I think he spanned over quite a few generations because he first came in the side in the early 90s. He went through towards the sort of central contract era, played in that good Michael Vaughan side, which got through to the sort of 2005 era, and then he went on and coached England for the best part of 10 years in the era of the likes of Cook, Anderson, Broad, Stokes, Root. So, Thorpe was a popular man throughout, across 3 decades, and as a player he was for me growing up as a sort of 12, 13-year-old, I mean, at Christmas it was the Kookaburra bat, and it wasn't Alex Stewart's, no disrespect to Stewie. It was Thorpe. Thorpe was the hero growing up. If you were a batter, you want to be Graeme Thorpe. If you were a bowler, in my era and my time growing up, 12, 13, 14, you want to be Darren Gough. And Thorpe was an amazing man, amazing player.
Ian, Martin Crowe was he was New Zealand cricket for a while, wasn't he? I mean, he was for a time when New Zealand teams had 2 or 3 great players, or even 1 or 2 great players. He was always amongst those great cricketers. Lost in his 50s, I think he was 57, to lymphatic cancer, and this is a fitting tribute to him as well.
It's very apt, and his family would have had no hesitation having his name put on something alongside Graeme Thorpe, I can promise you, because they had a number of things in common. They were classy people, classy players. And what they did most, I think, is they made it very hard for the opposition to get them out. They treasured their time in their cap, or their helmet. They treasured every opportunity to bat for their country, and they loved the game so deeply. Martin Crowe and the Basin Reserve, to me, is synonymous. I played with him when he first came into the side. 1982, he got worked over by the Australians, Thompson and co. at the Basin Reserve. He's just a kid. And it wasn't a great introduction for him. He went away, he worked hard at his game, and then one of my last memories of him here is, of course, 299 against Sri Lanka, when he nicked one off Juna Ranatunga, was caught, and he absolutely destroyed it. Folklore said he destroyed the dressing room down below. He was upset, put it that way. But when I think about Martin Crowe, particularly when I come to cricket grounds, I don't tear up. I just take a step backwards and think, because he's such a young man, he was taken so young, he had so much love for the game that he'd have been here boots and all in some capacity, and he was sorely missed. As a player, look, Williamson's numbers were already surpass him, but I can't remember a more gorgeous shot than the Martin Crowe on drive, and I can see it now, and just the satisfaction. I sat on the balcony. I was about 2 away from batting when he and Jones put on 400 and something. I never moved. It was 2 of the great days of my life.
Very similar records, actually. Martin Crowe scored 17 Test hundreds and had an average of 45.3, and Graeme Thorpe just one less, 16 hundreds at 44.66. They had quite a lot in common apart from their records, and one of those things was they scored the tough runs, didn't they? I mean, Thorpe particularly was known to revel when his teammates were struggling.
Absolutely, and that I mean, as 2 or 3 times I was out in the middle with Thorpe, and if I'm out in the middle with Thorpe, team tends to be in a bit of trouble. So there was once in Barbados, and I mean, I still to this day see the eyes. I mean, his eyes his eyes were like Murley's when you walked out to the middle. I think we were about 130 for 8. At the time, we were being 130 for 8 when Simon went in, and then I followed that. I think the West Indies got 230, 240 in Barbados. We were 2-0 up in the series, but England were in real trouble, and Thorpe was just stick with me. He had a point to prove. There was a backstory with a journalist, but I tell you what, when he had that point to prove, when he had that bit between his teeth, I mean, he wore a few on his body, nudged a few down to sort of square leg. Fielders came in, bosh. You know, he hit the ball over the top, bang, straight down the ground, and he would be like, just get me on strike, get off strike, get me on strike, and stick with me. I mean, he was tiny in stature, but colossal in figure. And a couple of times, I think I was out in the middle with him as well at the Oval. And he was just, you know, you talk about the player in the numbers. You mentioned the numbers there, and it's interesting in the numbers. And Smithy's talked about Kane. You look at Kane and Joe Root. They've, you know, that type of batter is averaging 5-6 more than anybody else in the world who you see as a good player. Thorpe was like that with England. He averaged just under 45 at a time where Nasser Hussain, Mike Atherton, Alex Stewart. Stewie was 40. Everybody else was 38, 39. So in that era, he was just that little bit better than everybody else from an England point of view. And then when he went on the world stage, I mean, his first 100 was against Australia in the Ashes, and that tells you everything.
Martin was a great technician, wasn't he? I remember him talking about improving and evolving his game and adapting it to different conditions and different types of bowling. And he just got better and better, didn't he? And also known for scoring the tough runs when the team really needed them most.
Absolutely. You know, a number of times he was left to bat with the tail, or those further down the order, because he was the one that found a way at number 4, and that was his spot in Test cricket. I think often too, your teammates and your countrymen are always going to talk fondly about certain players. It's how much the opposition talk about you and how the other countries regard you. And both of those two players that we're talking about now, Graeme Thorpe and Martin Crowe, are often talked about by opposition players that they played against at the time. And because they were hard to get out, they were good technicians, they worked hard at their game. As I said, they treasured every opportunity they had. If you ask Wasim Akram, probably the greatest left arm bowler in the history of the game, quick bowler, who the hardest bowler he was to bowl to, he'll say Martin Crowe, 10 times out of 10. Now, I never bowled to Martin Crowe. I batted with him at the other end a lot. But when Wasim Akram says, with all the players he bowled to over the years, says Martin Crowe straight off the bat every time, even now, I think that says quite a lot too. Martin Crowe, he worked hard though. He was a naturally good cricketer, but he never took it for granted. He worked and he worked and he worked, and he tried to develop his game, and then he became a one-day opener because he believed that the best player on the side should have the opportunity to face the most balls. I mean, that's fairly common sense, isn't it? But that's the way he ended up playing. Of course, one of his great swan songs was his 1992 Cricket World Cup, where he was player of the tournament amongst some very good players.
Thorpe was the same for the sort of hard working bit. He'd go into a net and completely, you know, like disintegrate the surface in front of him if he was playing against like top quality spin, and then just get, I mean, a load of net bowlers, spin bowlers, and bowl. And I mean the holes he would dig and the sand he would put down. And it was so challenging, but that was, well, I'm going to play like this. This is how my practice is going to be, because it's what it's going to be like in the middle. And he was a deep thinker, was great. And he was somebody from I mean, sometimes you looked at Thorpe and you go, you don't really enjoy cricket, especially when he's not in it. I mean, when he was out and about and having a laugh and a carry on, you're thinking, you're not really enjoying cricket. But he loved it when he was in it, and when he became a coach, I was like, this is going to be interesting, because I didn't think Thorpe loved the game that much, but he did. He loved being in it. So when you're a coach, you're in it all the time. And so that after a while was no surprise that he coached some of the best players in the generation he coached, because of his love for the game. And that was evident to see. And you just have to listen to the likes of the boys that are playing, the more experienced players that are playing in this game. We spoke to Joe Root before the series started, and the way Joe speaks fondly about him and Ben speaks fondly about him tells you that their relationship of coach and player and the environment that he sort of pushed the boundaries to make them better. You've got to love the game for that, and Graeme Thorpe did.
Let's talk about just briefly their passing, because they were very different. Graeme Thorpe's family, wife and children wanted it to be known that he passed by his own hand after a long struggle with mental health. Martin Crowe, on the other hand, had years to come to terms with a diagnosis that was terminal, Ian, and the enormous courage that he showed. But again, I mean, we'll talk about the memorial services and the funerals of both. I know that you delivered the eulogy, you told me, Ian, for Martin Crowe, but that I don't know which is more traumatic for their family and their loved ones and their teammates, the sudden and unexpected passing, or one that takes 3 or 4 years, wasn't it, Ian?
Well, it was. It was inevitable because once he was diagnosed with that form of cancer, you don't generally get past the 5-year mark. You get a bit of a time where you may have gone to remission and you may have a little bit of hope, but he didn't make the 5-year mark as was predicted, so it was inevitable. He knew it, we all knew it, and I knew he was not that well, but I was commentating in the 2019 Cricket World Cup at Trent Bridge, and I often got texts from Martin just to say, oh, that was a poor shot, or we're going through a tough time, we can't win this game. He'd get frustrated because he's still living the game even on the couch at home. And I got this text from him saying, "G'day mate, how you going? Enjoying your commentary, can you do my eulogy?" And that was it. And I thought, wow. I went out the back and spoke to Mark Nicholas, actually, who's a very good friend of Martin's, and he looked at it and he thought, really? And I said, yeah. So, well, I mean, you can't say no, of course. So I went to see him when I got home from that, and 2 or 3 more times before he actually passed. And the day that he did pass, I got a number of texts saying, sorry about your mate, sorry about your mate. And I actually found out, through that, rather than being personally told. But that's fine. But then I started a long way out to think about how you'd sum up Martin Crowe and his life and his cricketing life in 10 minutes, 12 minutes? Well, you can't really. I actually probably went a bit longer than I should, but I felt to myself, look, here's the thing, you get one chance at this, and this guy's exceptional. I did the cricketing side of it, other people did the personal side of it, but it was, we knew it was coming, but when it hit you, and when I stood up there and he had his casket was there, and it was an orange casket, and it was different because he was different. And you just touch it as you walk past, and you think to yourself, well, I hope I can do you justice here. We'll get one chance at this fella. I think it worked out pretty well, but it was a hard life to sum up, and to be taken so soon. That's the thing, and as I said to you before, I see Martin Crowe's face as we're talking about it now, and I see Martin Crowe's face at the Basin Reserve.
Yeah, and Graeme Thorpe, like you mentioned, man, as his family wanted known that it was Graeme's choice, and it is when you hear the news that it's suddenly happened, and a friend and somebody who you've been close to and you've gone to battle with in many times. It is a heartbreaking moment, but Graeme's struggles were probably after the Ashes I think the COVID Ashes in Australia, where I think they were confined, they were cooped up. Obviously what happened at the end of it, England losing, Graeme not sort of working for England anymore, and I think that was the start of it, of what happened from a mental point of view, and he possibly didn't feel as though he could talk to anybody, reach out to and get help, and I think he had got help. And I know I've spoke to Mark Butcher and Adam Holyoke about the time leading up to it, and they've spoke about trying to be in touch with him, and Surrey are trying to be close to him. Richard Thompson, who did one of the eulogies he was the chairman of the ECB. I think they were great help to Graeme, but I think when you get into that position, and from somebody who suffered struggles in the past and spent a lot of time with other people who have struggled in the past, the outside world doesn't really come into your thoughts. It's when you're in your own head, and unfortunately from a negativity point of view, some people, it's an illness you have. It's not a weakness, it's an illness. And you sometimes only see there's one way out. And unfortunately for Graeme, what a great life he's had. It came to an end, and we talked about it just off air there, the funeral of Graeme Thorpe. The England cricketers in that church. There were some runs and wickets in there. There were some captains in there. There were some big players that have played cricket for England in there, and everybody that spoke about Graeme so warmly and fondly, and I still see him now. I actually see him differently. I don't see him at a cricket ground. I see him with a ridiculous flowered shirt on, sitting underneath a palm tree in Trinidad with a like a trilby, straw trilby, just tipped in front of his face, pina colada in hand. He's just gone 2-0 up in a West Indies series where we've been battered since the 60s against this great West Indies side. He took a few blows in Jamaica, we won there. Took a few blows in Trinidad, we're 2-0 up, and he was marvelling in the fact that where we were in the world in the series. And I said that to Joe Root, and Joe says, I've got exactly the same vision, and I think I see the same shirt. And he was just on the field he was a brilliant player. Off the field he was a beautiful character who was very stubborn. He knew his own mind, but he was a warm and beautiful teammate, and somebody who every time you've seen him, you always had a smile on your face, having a joke and a laugh and a drink with Thorpe, and that's something I'll miss.
What was your pina colada straw hat moment with Martin Crowe?
Well, more wine, more beautiful wines. I can tell you that when he was not that far away, he summoned myself, Lord Botham, who was only just Syrian at that time, and Simon Dool, and he said, Doc, there is an Italian restaurant about 1 kilometre from my house in Auckland. Just turn up at an appointed time and I'll bring the wine. And he actually carried a box of wine about 1 kilometre and some of his best wines because he wanted to share them with some good mates, and he didn't want them still to be unopened when he wasn't there. So that's my lasting memory, is a little Mission Bay cafe in Auckland. I can't remember the name of the Italian restaurant, but we sat outside on the pavement and people walked past and they said, nah, it can't be. No, it's not him both. No, it's not Martin Crowe. No, it can't be. They just kept walking. And there it was, just sitting outside. And you know what beefy's like. There wasn't a cork unpulled. So it was a hell of a night. That's how I remember Martin Crowe's satisfaction. Sitting in the dressing room downstairs, cigar when you could. Again, a nice glass of red wine and a look of satisfaction. Job done.
It's a fitting tribute, isn't it? And it is obviously Martin Crowe and Graeme Thorpe who will be remembered with this wonderful trophy. But I think it is what I enjoy about it is it's the connection that the players have. It's not an administrative trophy, if you like. I mean, it's a reminder to all players that it is about the players.
Yeah, and you watch, and I mean, we're sitting here, and it looks as though England are going to go 2-0 up. Go to Hamilton, whatever happens, Ben Stokes will get his hands on that trophy. You listen to Ben now. You listen to him speak. I mean, Ben speaks on the heart at the best of times. And when he's got to pick that trophy up with Graeme Thorpe's name on, for what he's gone through with Graeme Thorpe, remembering that Graeme Thorpe Joe Root and Ben Stokes carried Graeme Thorpe's casket out of the church at the funeral in Southwark, then you listen to Ben. Ben will talk fondly about and beautifully and warmth. The heart will really come out of Ben Stokes talking about Graeme Thorpe when he does eventually, hopefully, lift that trophy. And I think that then you'll realise how much Graeme Thorpe had an effect on Ben Stokes, Joe Root, and that generation, as well as my generation playing, watching him as a kid in my sort of informative cricket years of coming through the young age groups. Like I said right at the top, he transcended 3 decades of cricketers, and there's been some special talent that have gone through looking up to Graeme Thorpe.
Very much the same can be said about Martin Crowe, I suspect.
Well, I can remember my kids wanted to be Martin Crowe. in the backyard. They don't want to be Ian Smith, I can tell you that. They wanted to be Martin Crowe, and the kids around the corner when they came and played in the backyard, and they wanted to be Martin Crowe. I was very lucky because Martin Crowe was very close to our family. His brother Jeff is my eldest son's godfather. That's how close the Crowe and the Smiths are. And we have got at home a beautiful bat donated to my second son Jake by Martin Crowe, and it's signed by him and Donald Bradman. And it's the only two guys in cricket history who have been dismissed for 299 ever. And so we're going to keep that, as you will, in a case. And so I can got almost like a daily memory of it. Sits in my radio studio actually, so I've got a daily look at Martin Crowe and a daily memory of Martin Crowe. But he's the one they wanted to be during that generation. Now of course they want to be Kane Williamsons, but that's fine. And Martin Crowe would be the first to appreciate that. But many of the people here that still come to Test cricket are of the generation that saw Martin Crowe play. I'll never forget, and I think that's the great thing. That is the great thing. And listening to Harmy talk, the Test, I didn't know Graeme Thorpe that well actually. I commentated him quite a bit. Could see the kind of man he was by the way he valued what he was doing. But you just, and talking to you, Neil, it's quite moving actually to bring back the aspects of the closeness that you had with these people. And I think that's probably my memory is real close. Well, I mean, like we had a superstition back in the days when New Zealand cricket didn't have a lot of money, we had to share rooms. For goodness sake, remember those days? At home, Martin Crowe and I roomed together every time because we never lost a home series for about 8 years in a row. So it was superstitious more than anything else. And the only time I ever moved out on him was when he ate some mussels in Colombo, and the room wasn't worth living in, I can tell you.
Gentlemen, the Crow-Thorp Trophy, long may it be played for, and I think we should wait until the end of the game and raise a glass of red to both gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Perfect.